His 4-decade-long teaching at Tribhuvan University continued until he took retirement as a professor of English language education in 2015. From 2011 to 15, he worked as the founding Vice Chancellor of Far Western University. Currently, he is a visiting faculty and research committee member at School of Education of Kathmandu University. He has co-authored and co-edited more than 35 textbooks for school and university level students. He has given plenary and key speeches in national and international conferences on ELT and education. He was one of the founding members of Linguistics Society of Nepal, LSN, Nepal English Language Teachers Association, NELTA, Fulbright Alumni Association of Nepal, FAN, and Teacher Educator Society Nepal, TESON, and worked as the past president of NELTA and LSN. Now, without any delay, I would like to invite Professor Awasthi for his much awaited presentation on trends in applied linguistics. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minji, for that illustrious introduction, which I think very difficult for me to hold. The book really talks about different definitions of applied linguistics given by different scholars, how they perceive applied linguistics as such. And then also a leader. I mean, he claimed that there are world-class leaders in applied linguistics. And if you look at the book, there are some leaders which the names of the leaders are given there. And then also he talks about most important articles and books through the mouth of these world-class applied linguistic readers. When we talk about the most important articles, he surveyed, the articles that the people read, the frequency that they had, and the books that they read. Actually, in the light of that very survey, he gives a list of the, most important articles in the books, and also talks about theories and methodology in applied linguistics, psycholinguistics, sociolinguistics, and educational aspects of language education, and also talks about the dynamic turns that came into the area of applied linguistics. And a citation problem, we all know it because some people use MLA, some people use Harvard, some people use Chicago, some people use American Anthropological Society, and some people use others. And then also, finally, he concludes the book with the impact of applied linguistics research in language teaching and learning. So I recommend that you people read this book. If you cannot download it, please let me know. I will send you the book. This is wonderful research. Now, the problems that Grabe raised in applied linguistics are language learning. Basically, applied linguistics, when it was born, it started with, I will talk a little later, main concentration was on language learning, and which gave birth to second language acquisition and first language acquisition. Also, language teaching and part with language learning. And then you've got language contact, problems in language context, problems in language policy and planning, problems in language inequality, and problems in language pathology, literacy, language assessment. I will talk about problems that has been raised in language assessment also. I'll give you an example. And a language and technology that has emerged viable, and this is what we've been using even in the lockdown days. Early this morning, I was listening to Professor Chomsky. He gave a 60-minute talk to the Brazilian Association of Linguistics, and I will give you a small synopsis of what his talk was all about. And then language and translation and the language use. These are the problems categorically William Grace gave, which language can handle. Now let's go one by one to these problems. Now, the question of language learning is there. I mean, William Graves thinks that there are problem of emergence of language skills, how people acquire language skills and how they emerge, what efforts they have to make, how they have to be aware of these language skills and the rules, rule-based language learnings are there, how they use these skills and the context in which the language learning takes place. And when we talk about contextualization, DNG knows because he has also done his research on instructional in different contexts. And then automaticity, this goes back to structural linguistics and then behaviorist psychology and the language attitude while learning. Some children do have favorable, positive attitudes to learn a language. Some people think that, oh, I don't want to learn this language, it's horrible. And maybe expertise, how expertise can be developed through language learning. Or in consonance with language learning, there is a problem of language teaching also because of the resources. I mean, we have to buy the commercially available resources also, or we have to produce our own resources. We need training to teacher training, overwhelming teacher training to equip our teachers to teach in different context, and then practice, how the practice is given, contextual or just drilling or interaction or understanding of the language, teaching, and then use, context, inequalities in terms of the teachers' qualifications, teachers' age, teachers' experiences, and teachers' motivation. Some people are motivated but demotivated also, and the outcomes of teaching, how it is judged. So these are the areas where William feels the problems lie. The other one associated with language learning and language teaching is this historic book which revolutionized applied linguistics. I don't know how many of you have seen this book. Robert Lado. I got it from the English Language Institute at the University of Michigan way back in 1985. When I was doing my intern at English Language Institute, I found this book where Robert Lado was former director of the same institute, and he did his PhD in the same institute with Professor Charles Carpenter Fries. So, when you talk about this book, why it revolutionized, it is the first book perhaps so well read by the people in the area of applied language, applied linguistics for language teachers. It gave birth to practically gave birth to contrastive analysis. It gave birth to error analysis because there were the questions on contrastive analysis. It gave birth to language transfer. There were a lot of researches done in second language acquisition, and initial stages in 1960s and the 70s, you could see a vehement research in language transfer. My own guru, Susan Gyas and the Professor Salinker, they did a lot of research on language transfer, and this gave birth to a kind of insight into the material production. People gave a thought that we have to compare and contrast two languages in order to produce the second language materials, and also talked about learner feedback, in which area the learners need to get feedback, and also gave some insights into language teaching because the preface was written by Charles Fries. And then he also shows the importance of comparison of two languages in order to produce the material. This is what you are well aware of, right, from your B.Ed course. It also talks about language and culture because, there's one unit on the comparison of culture, but Robert Lado himself confesses that he could not do justice to the comparison of culture, which was very difficult. And then his sole informant was his own mother, who was a monolingual Spanish speaker in the United States. So therefore, he wanted to dedicate his book to his mother, who was not English speaker at all in the United States. She was Spanish speaker. So this book is very historic, but gave birth to second language acquisition, gave birth to applied linguistics, geared up applied linguistics perhaps. So the soft copy of this book is not available. I've got the hard copy. If anybody wants to just, make a copy of for keepsake, I don't think that now you'll be doing any contrastive analysis, but you can make it for keepsake also. It can be made available. Now, the other problem is language and then technology problems. We are facing this problem, and I was talking to the NELTA, state 5 people yesterday about the use of technology in the Nepalese schools, Nepalese classroom. And then the problem is with the learning. The first one is with the learning of technology by the teachers themselves. And then, learning of technology, using technology by the students. And then taking technology for assessment. And also access. This is a vital thing because we have got the problem of digital literacy and the problem of access. In our remote areas, are you people listening to me?
Yes, sir. Yes.
There are some microphones on, so therefore, I overhear the people
Yes,
talking.
sir. We are clearly hearing, sir.
Okay, thank you. So there's another problem of access because, I used to give example that there are developed countries where there is access to all these digital gadgets. For example, the Chinese high school students, 85% of them do have the smartphones, and then they love to have their homeworks through these cell phones, and they submit their homeworks through cell phones. Same in the case of Japan, where 81% of the high school students do have a smartphone to do academic work. And then how to use these academic gadgets. As you know, we are too old dog to chew and chew and digest the tough kind of meat, and technology has been a tough raw meat for us also, but the children can easily cope up with it. So these are the problems that applied linguistics helps to solve. Then comes language contact and problems. You have got social and cultural interaction because we have got such a diverse society. Culturally, we are diverse. Socially, we are diverse, and we have got several social strata. We have got higher class people. Then we have got upper middle class, and then there is a man-made social hierarchy also. So is the case of cultural diversity. We have got rich cultural, diversity in the country, and then the problem is how the people from one society to another, from one culture to another interact and within the norm set by those culture and then social culture and social strata. And same is the case with the maintenance of language context. How can we maintain our social and cultural interaction, and then how it spreads. Once we can solve the problem of social and cultural interaction, then we can spread it. And then the problem now is in terms of the language also, there is maintaining the language. We are losing the language. We have the problem maintaining the language. There is language shift also. People shift from change one language for another. And then there's language assimilation also. For example, the dominant language normally, suppresses the minority languages. If you move from one place to another place, either you have to assimilate with the language or you have to shift. And then the language spread, how the language spreads and how it dies. And same is the case with the bilingualism. We have to, our society is multilingual. Even in a small community also, bilingualism exists, and there is always problem of. And then I'm very happy that you did have sessions on language policy planning with big shots like Dr. Prem Fyagji, Dr. Jai Raj Awasthi and Syamji, I think, and so many people, who gave insights into how, multilingualism, bilingualism can be maintained and then can be used, can be an asset in language education. Then the question of multilingualism comes, where you could have, and in Nepal, as we know, we have recorded 129 languages. This is the record of the Language Commission. And then the census 2011 shows 123. We used to plead on 126. Now, thanks God, the Language Commission recorded 129 languages spoken in this country. So in such a multilingual garden where we have got 129 beautiful flowers, now how to plan for them? That is very important, because we have got acquisition planning, which refers to the language planning at the national, state, and local level, how the nation, Lavadev Sir's commission plans the language, how the states, different states plan the languages that are spoken in their region, in their states, and how the local governments particularly maintain and plan the languages so that they get the status. They get the status that is distributed, and also literacy can be maintained in the local languages for educational purposes. And when you talk about status planning, once you say, I will go to corpus first. So once you say, plan the corpus of the language. For example, you have to create the standard language. In order to standardize language, you have to have its orthography, have its got its script, and then also got its own spelling and grammar system. And we create dictionaries, we create literature. And I give you one example. When you started Limbu mother tongue in Eastern Nepal, we had to borrow the books from Sikkim, because in Sikkim, Limbu language is spoken by majority of the people, and they had got the strict scripts and was taught at the college level as well. So therefore, once we have the all these corpus planned and then standardized, then we can give a status of local status, state level status, and national status of a particular language. Then comes the problem of ecology of the language. When this word ecology of language was borrowed from Huygens, because Einar Huygens was a great scholar in the field of language planning. He produced a lot of books on language planning in early 70s, 71, 72. And then he defines it as a language that interacts with the environment. And then this is now, we call it ecology of the classroom. It has gone to the classroom also, ecology of the classroom language. And then also the political factor that play a role in language planning, because, if the politics is favorable, then the language can get status, and then multilingualism can be planned in a proper way, and all the languages get status, they get recognition, they get status, and the children get the education through their own language. Then comes language and translation. This is booming, say, applied linguistics genres. The problem now arise in access to translation. We may not have the access to the translated version of the books, and then how the translation is effective, whether it's literal translation, whether it's a sense translation, or whether the translation goes in the spirit of the original authors, and how technology can be like machine translation. All technologies can be used in the translation. For example, the UN, if you give a speech in English, it is automatically translated in other five languages. So technology is working so fast in applied linguistics. And then comes language inequality. This is serious in Nepal also, and in other parts of the world also, because we have got as many cultures, as many languages, that many ethnicity in this country. So therefore, once we do not give, say, status to the language of a particular ethnic group, that creates a problem. It's regional dialects, for example, regional language also. You have got some languages spoken in a particular region. So therefore, there's a problem of that also. And we are still unable to say, finalize the state level languages also because of the diversity, because of the wide variety of ethnicity living in that particular area. Also class also. I mean, there's a problem of class. We have got social strata, higher, lower, upper, man-made strata or economic strata, economically created strata. And then there's another also, or the gender balance in language and age factor also, because, you know, while teachers go to the classroom, they have to go down to the earth, to the age level of the students and speak the language that they speak. So these inequalities remain problems, and then language can solve these problems. This is what Grabe says. And then another one is speech language pathology. And when we talk about language pathology, we have got aphasia, which is related to the brain, where we have got damage in the brain and the people cannot understand and produce the speech. This is because of the damage in the left hemisphere of the brain, which processes the language, and then which is called the language zone. So people will have the inability. So we do not have enough labs, pathology labs, where people can go and then develop their language. The other one is dyslexias, where, you know, because of the brain damage, there's a problem with language processing also, and then people have the difficulty in reading and identifying. That's there. And then also there are other physical disabilities in the people. These are also problems in applied linguistics. Then comes language use. This has been a little bit talked earlier also. We have got different dialects. And then, you know, if you talk about the dialectical studies, this leads to the, say, creation of world Englishes, particularly if you talk about English dialects. Now, after 1985, Kachru is the other tongue, and then the three circle, say, Englishes. English distinctly now is no more dialects, but it is going to be Englishes. And then there's a hell lot of literature in world Englishes, journals, and then a lot of literature in world Englishes. And you had wonderful presentation from Tikasa, so I will not talk about that. No, I was traveling, this was an incident in 2000 when I was traveling the southern part of London, that was Plymouth, where our Lakshman sir did his master's in teacher training. So one gentleman, elderly gentleman with a hat, came and asked me, "Where are you from?" I said, "Well, I'm from Nepal." "So what do you do there?" I said, "Well, I teach English. Sometimes I teach American English and sometimes I teach British English." Oh, then he became furious. He said, "Oh, there is no American English. There's English only. That's English spoken by the English people. That's English only." So that is the dogma. That's the people are still, you know, English people think that this is their property. But now, since Nepal also spends about 20% of its national budget in the teaching of English, so we have equal right to claim at least, you know, 20% English is ours also. And then you have seen, you know, Raisi wrote an article in English, and then there are articles in English on Yamuna and Bajra Kacharujis and others pleading of world Englishes. Similar is Alistair Pennycook. These people are championing the world Englishes. And then also register, you know, that gave birth to ESP, English for Specific Purposes, where you've got medical English, you've got engineering English. One of my students is doing PhD in engineering English. So there are varieties of, say, Englishes. They are related to particular occupation and a profession also. And then there are discourse communities, you know, you can have communities having their own discourses, and that differs from one community to another community. And then comes the other aspect, which is literacy, because in order to standardize the language, in order to plan the language, the first thing is we have to design the new script, orthography, we have to develop in order to give literacy to the people in their own mother tongue. That is there. And there are similar issues, language issues that exist at the local level. And then not only that, we have to develop resources in order to give literacy to the people in their own mother tongue. So this is another problem. And then CDC once started translating books in different languages. I think they have translated about books in about 8 or 9 languages, but I don't know their application. So still the problem will arise, and then this is what the Language Commission has to see, how the new orthography can be developed, because we still take Devanagari, which is similar to Indian Hindi also. Now, research emphasis on broadly is seen on applied linguistics, on language teaching, language learning, and teacher education. If you look at teacher education, yesterday, I think Richard Smith shared one book, Collaborative Action Research, Teacher Research. If you have downloaded that book from his link, please do that. If you haven't downloaded, I can supply to you. I downloaded, I read it yesterday only. So it's a wonderful book on action research, exploratory action research, participatory research, practical research, and action research. It has got wonderful, say, examples, wonderful worksheets, so you can use them also. And then teacher education is booming. I will show you the emphasis on the researches across the border in teacher education, how important it has been recently. And then critical studies took a lead recently, because once we took everything for granted, whatever was given to us, but now we have the right, learners have the right to question, and then teachers have the right to question. Therefore, critical studies have overshadowed almost all the disciplines. Now you can see critical applied linguistics, you can see critical sociolinguistics, critical psycholinguistics. You can see this criticality overshadowing all the disciplines in anthropology, sociology, and in other parts also. And language used in various settings, we'll talk about, as I gave you instance of workplace English also. So, we have got different professional other settings as well, where English is used, or one language is used, or other language is used. And multilingualism and bilingualism, this is a core thing that has been in the prime, and then I have told you about it. And language testing and assessment. So these are the 5 broad categories in applied linguistics, but we'll see whether these all categories encompass the rest of the micro categories of applied linguistics or not. So look at one example from Donald Trump's language use in US presidential campaign in 2016. And this was the critical analysis of just one article. The speech that he gave on his primary success from his electoral campaign from the Republican Party in 2016, when he was nominated by a Republican Party to contest with Hillary Clinton. So this is the little bit of critical discourse analysis, where he talked about Americanism, which is in that small space, he used that word 31 times. And immigration, he charged on immigration. And then that was the time when he proposed to have a wall, big wall across the border in southern part of the United States, which was repeated for 10 times, and terrorism 2 times. And what he means by terrorism, I will give example. And a rigged system, 5 say frequencies. economy and trade, which because he's a businessman, therefore he put much more emphasis on economy and trade. This was the article, you can download it. It's a wonderful article, a critical discourse analysis of Donald Trump's language use in the US presidential campaign 2016. The article was published in the International Journal of Applied Linguistics and English Language, English Literature. It's volume 6 and 5. You can download it. Now, the examples that he gave is the speech lasted 75 minutes, and then he used 5,144 words, and then he used very short sentences. I mean, compared to other presidents in the history, about 200 years of American president history, he gave the short speech. And then ideology on the lexemes. He gave more emphasis on the words that he used, and both in the sentence level also. And it was very provocative language also, because, you know, it was election campaign, therefore provocative language comes there. Short sentences, but very emphatic. And rhetorically, he said, "We make America great again." And then he charged on Hillary Clinton, saying that the legacy of Hillary Clinton is death, destruction, terrorism, and weakness. Look at these words. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you do such kind of critical discourse analysis of the political speeches of the Nepalese leaders, they will be rather horrible. I mean, if you ever try to do research on them. Then, you know, now the applied linguistics is moving towards the language at work also. If you look at this book, the Handbook of Language in the Workplace, this is the Routledge Handbook. You can download it. So the key areas of the workplace that this book talks about, the articles and the researches done are on directives in workplace talk. You know, if you look at the Western countries, people at the workplace do not talk much among themselves because they have to serve the people. So therefore, there's no talking compared to the Nepali workplace, where there is a lot of tea, newspaper reading, and then a lot of gossips, a lot of politics, a lot of other things. So, and the relation talk at work, I mean, what relation do you mean? The relational talk. What is the relationship between the hierarchy at the workplace? And humor in workplace, what kind of humor? Maybe with the client. Or workplace narratives, what kind of language is used in the workplace? And then miscommunication that takes place in workplace, because if you are not proficient in language, definitely there may be miscommunication. And then because of the language, conflict may arise, and then argumentation takes place. So these are some of the research work, some of the wonderful chapters that you can read. It's a wonderful book, wonderful handbook, though it's a bulky, maybe about 600-700 pages. But you know, during log time, you can read as many books as you want. And if you cannot download, just let me know, I will send you. Now look at the 5 categories of the applied linguistics that, sorry. Okay. Okay, 5 broad areas of applied linguistics that I just told you. And then look at these, strands. Micro level topics that AALA, went a little bit further to this in 2011, but this is American Association of Applied Linguistics, which gave priority to these areas for the presentation. The first one is assessment. I don't know whether you can read assessment and evaluation. And then they have got, this is what they call ASE, bilingualism, immersion, heritage, and language minority education, language cognition and brain research, corpus linguistics, analysis of discourse and interaction, educational linguistics, language, culture, socialization and pragmatics, language and ideology, language maintenance and revitalization, language planning and policy, second and foreign language pedagogy, phonology, phonetics and oral communication, research methodology, reading, writing, and literacy, second language acquisition, and attrition, or sociolinguistics, language and technology, teacher education, beliefs, and identities, translation, interpretation, and language access, text analysis, that is written discourse, and a vocabulary and lexical studies. So these are the 21 strands against the International Association of Applied Linguistics 28, which it gave in 2010 for its international conference. So you can match them and then see where they fit in. Then a new development that came in post-humanist applied linguistics. So you can download this book also, Posthumanist Applied Linguistics by Alistair Pennycook. It came out in 2018, I think, and you can download it. If you cannot, please let me know. I can send you. Now, you know, what is this post-human? What is human? What is post-human? Now, so far we know that language is human. And then we have always discarded the animal communication. We have, you know, this morning I was listening to a speech called Rosie Bridotti. Please, she has got a lot of speeches in, she is a gender specialist. She's a professor in Australia. She was giving a powerful speech in Harvard University. So on post-humanism, post-humanist humanism. So please listen to her. She's such a powerful lady at the age of 67. She's as powerful as Noam Chomsky. As you know, Noam Chomsky is, how old is he? He is 92 years old. And he got married at the age of 86 with a lady who was 51. So anyway, so this, you know, people talk about human. This is what Rosie said. Human is not male. Human is not female. What is human? Who is human? And when people talk about human, they always talk about male figure only. So there's always gender biasness when they talk about, say, gender biasness. So this morning when Chomsky was talking about his worries, I could see at the age of 92, he has got worries. One is COVID-19, and he bitterly criticized President Trump also on it. And the other thing is, since he was giving a speech to the Brazilian Linguistics Association, he showed the devastation in the Amazon region, which could bring ecological problem and environmental problem. So he's much more, related to ecological linguistics in that sense. So therefore, that was the worry that he began his speech with. So here, you know, post-human condition introduces a qualitative shift in our thinking about what exactly is the basic of common reference for our species, our polity, and our relationship to other inhabitants of this planet. There may be inhabitants, but there may be non-human also. You know, what about the plants? I was giving a speech in Alta conference last time. I was talking about eco-pedagogy. So what is the role of ecology in pedagogy? Why do we worship Tulsi? You know, but that's a plant. And why do we worship sun? Why do we worship moon? And why we worship stone? Say, claiming that there's a God. So we have got the feeling, we've got the thought, and when we worship stone also. Let me give an example. In a nearby village, my village, there's a stone called, if Deepak Misraji is there, he knows it very well. So a stone is called Bahurani and Jethaju. Bahurani and Jethaju sat on the same stone, and the stone gets split. And since that moment, Bahurani and Jatazu do not touch each other. This is the Western culture, far Western culture. I don't know about others. So since then, these two splitted stones, they exist there, and people say worship them. So what is it? It is linguistics. People have the feeling, people have the thought. So this is what we have to go beyond the humans and see. And once we go beyond the humans, then we can talk about the human rights. We can see the violation, we can stop the violence of the human rights also. So therefore, the notion of humans and non-humans is no longer required for research purposes. This is what the post-human people say. And then if you read Pennyworth's this book, it's wonderful. You can see the examples from religion, from space, from plants, from different areas, how they are treated, and then how the polity has to treat them. Fuller in 2011 says it's a re-evaluation of the role of objects. You know, different objects have different roles. As I said, a stone becomes a Shivaji for us. So why do we worship that stone, assuming that it's a human, it's a Shivaji? If you close your eyes, you could look at the human there. And the space also, we keep a particular space for that in relation to human thinking and the capacity through various forms of human enhancement. Therefore, we go for post-human also. And look at the star. I mean, you look at the star and say, you think about the position of the star, and then you have the meaning out of it. And then, if you look at the moon, you have a meaning out of it. So therefore, this is what post-human applied linguistics is all about. Then it is about rethinking the relationship of the place, world around. It is about listening. If you close your eyes, you can listen to the stones. You can listen to the nature. You can feel the air and understand the world. Act is humility, showing respect to everything, because God has created human. God has created non-human as well. So therefore, you have got the kind of human rights and the rights of other species and even non-humans also. This is a part of, say, applied post-human applied linguistics. Having said it, let me go back to Gary Burkhagen. In terms of English language teaching or TESOL, he proposed these areas that should be researched in ESOL research. This article came out in the TESOL Encyclopedia of English Language Teaching in 2018. So these are the broad criteria of language teaching research he proposes. I have adapted them because some of them were long, but I curtailed them with due respect to him. Language skills, methods, and materials. Once you say language skills, you don't have to say reading, writing, listening, all these and the materials related to it. You don't have to say about online and then print media. These are all, say, materials and resources. Grammar, vocabulary, and pragmatics. Language teacher education. Learner motivation. Language testing and assessment. Language and identity. Language and education policy and planning. TESOL standards and best practice initiatives. So this is what Gary proposes, the areas where we can start our research, we can do our research. Now this article is not a very big one, it is about 6 pages, I think. If you want, I can send you. This is downloaded from the TESOL Encyclopedia of English Language Teaching. Now, compared to, say, Gary's categorization of the research areas, now let me take you to the studies in second language learning and teaching. This is the broad category of the broad category proposed by second language learning and teaching for its conference, whether they tie up or not, because these are basically a macro-sized one. So let's compare them, and then hopefully they will match with his broad categories. The first one is politics and English language teaching, English medium of instruction. That's also part of politics. Then another one is English language teaching, policy and practices, language ideology or ideology, whatever you say, language policies and practices, teaching English as a third language. This is a big issue in Nepal because we think that, not only in Nepal, but in other parts of the world also, even in the United States or Britain also, English is the third language for many, say a huge population. So this is a problem in Nepal also, though it's a foreign language, but it is the third language for Hiraji is there. Hiraji speaks Tamang language at home and then goes to study Nepali second language, and English tends to become third language. So therefore, we have a vast majority of the population, more than 51% of the people have English as the third language in this country itself. So promoting intercultural competence in ELT, language and translanguaging in ELT, critical literacy, language curricula for young learners, English as an additional language, English for specific purposes, assessment and evaluation in ELT, fairness and ethics in English assessment. One of my students and then colleague submitted his PhD in language testing ethics at Tiruvallur University. He is nearing completing it, his final viva also. So he shows the anomalies that is seen in the language testing ethics at Tiruvallur University. Then a learner and learning environment, language learning strategies, imagining communities, perhaps, identity and English language learning in a multilingual world, creating motivating classroom environment, creating a technology-rich English language learning environment, pronunciation in English as a lingua franca, current perspectives in vocabulary teaching and learning, pedagogic grammar in today's classroom, digital literacy for English language learners, English learners with disabilities, content and language integrated language teaching learning. So these are the macro areas proposed by studies in second language learning and teaching for 2020 conference. So you can match them with the broad categories that Gary has proposed. Then look at the research trends in ELE in Nepal. I reviewed 28 MPhil theses, and then see the trend of ELE in the Nepalese theses because I could not do a big research. Look at the research topics. Multilingualism 3, teacher education 6, learner autonomy 1, literacy 1, method of teaching 5, technology integrated language teaching 1, or technological embedding, or language and power 2, writing 1, learning strategies 3, medium of instruction 1, teaching strategies 1, language anxiety 1, and teaching materials 1. And the research methods applied is narrative inquiry. Gary would have been very happy to see that, 9 people. And then autoethnography 2, interpretive paradigm, that is 16, which is the richest one, and then linguistic theory 1. So none of these research was quantitative. All of them were qualitative research. This is a small sample, and then so the research topic that we have researched at the micro level and the methodology that we have used. Now, keeping in view the same sense, Cairo University, Egypt, I reviewed their one from the article that is published in 2018, ELT Research in Egypt, Trends and Challenges in Journal of Multilingual and Multicultural Development. It shows that teacher education contains the highest percentage of research, 21.67, reading 20 against ours, because we have left say content area in doing research, even at the master's level or at the MPhil or PhD level. But only 2 of my students are doing PhD in reading, so they are using content. But there is also methodology, not the development of reading or development of writing. Here you've got reading 20.27%, writing 19.8, speaking 769, listening 699, curriculum program evaluation 699, learning practices 629, vocabulary 659, language testing 489. So this is the trend that I got from University of Cairo, just to match it with our say emphasis in ELE research area. And then taking you to Gary's say New Zealand, here is one say research summary where the areas in research are. This is areas of research in New Zealand. This was the research that were reviewed from 2006 to 2010 and then published in Language Teaching Journal 46, Volume 2 in 2013. The teaching and learning of indigenous community languages gets a priority. Then literacy in and outside classroom, reading and writing, listening and speaking, pragmatics, assessment, vocabulary, grammar, technology, independent learning, course design, cognitive and affective factors in language learning, language teacher education, which gets the least priority there because most of the teachers are trained there. So now you can compare our small research, small say sample 28, and then Cairo sample, and then the research that were carried out in New Zealand from 2006 to 2010 in terms of language teaching. These are the titles of the researches. I have not written the names of the researcher for anomaly, and then I have not also told you the university where these were conducted. So this is the list. And then with these, the conclusion is, there has been a great deal of work in applied linguistics to handle the word problems with the language, because language creates problem. Once language is planned, there are less problems, and there's changing trends in applied linguistics, and post-humanism is coming. So it is it is in academia during this 1 decade period, and then there is a changing trend in ELT also. People are inclined much more to methodology and an other aspect than core language skills. So this is what I reviewed and what I found, and then this is, I think I must conclude with my small presentation. Thank you very much indeed for listening to me. I appreciate for your patience at this hour. So if you've got any queries and questions, I'll be more than happy to address them, and we'll learn from them as well if you make the comments for future development of this presentation. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, DNG. Thank you, Scholars Association. Thank you, Mahendranagar. And thank you all the 87 listeners who are present here. Thank you very much.